Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to sit down with you and chat about some of my reading plans for the autumn season. So, truth to be told, I've been reading quite slowly and sporadically since I came home from my vacation in the early parts of August, in the mid parts of August. I can't even remember the exact date. But then I started working immediately and I feel like I haven't really found my reading groove quite yet. I'm starting to get there. I feel like I'm starting to slowly get into the reading habit again, but for the first few weeks I felt like I had a hard time concentrating on things. I was just sort of adjusting to going back to work, and also a major thing happening in terms of my reading time is that I got a Nintendo Switch and I started playing Animal Crossing, which has taken up a good portion of my free time. And I've not really felt any regrets regarding it. I've just been having so much fun. It was something that I had been trying to avoid because I knew that it would take up a lot of my time. And I didn't feel like I was willing to give up all of that time for a game. I knew it would take away particularly from reading, which is probably one of the things that I spend most of my free time doing otherwise. But I've had a lot of fun. I am getting to the point that I can actually start designing things. I've just been doing a lot of like basic setting up towards this point, but it's been really fun and it has definitely affected my reading. And so my reading mood has been kind of weird and going through stages post-vacation. So I thought I would take a moment to sit down and chat about some books that I'm currently in the mood to read during the autumn season. It's a mishmash of things, and I think they sort of fit into a few categories that I've felt drawn to at the moment, and I think it is because I've been playing and doing other things. I need other types of reading that I don't always automatically feel myself drawn to. So I've definitely noticed some patterns when it comes to the books I want to read at the moment. So one of the categories, I guess, is children's literature and sort of middle grade type things, I'd say. The first one I want to mention is Wildwood by Colin Molloy, which is the first book in this trilogy that is illustrated beautifully by Carson, Ellis, who is one of my favorite illustrators. And I've wanted to read this trilogy for such a long time. I own the entire trilogy as well. I got it as a Christmas gift, I think, in 2016 or 17. So it has been on my to-read list for a long time. And as I mentioned, it is beautifully illustrated. It has maps, which is always a good thing. It's about siblings, and one of them goes missing, is stolen or kidnapped by crows, if I remember correctly. Prue McKeel's life is ordinary, that is, until her brother is abducted by a murder of crows and taken to the impassable wilderness, a dense, tangled forest on the edge of Portland. No one ever goes in, or at least return to tell of it. So it's basically about a magical wilderness, woods kind of situation, and I feel like, as I said, it feels very autumny to me, and I've been really in the mood for this type of reading. And in particular, as you will be able to tell from the other books in this TBR, is I've been very drawn to series, which I don't usually read a lot of, but I think there's something about being able to lose yourself in a series that I feel very drawn to at the moment. The other middle grade type or children's literature series that I would like to get into again in this autumn is The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is a tiny Macmillan, I think, edition. Macmillan Collector's Library. I only own the first one in the series, but I have actually read at least 4 or 5 of the books in the series, probably more than that, because I read several of them as a child, and I read them out of order. The first book and the second book I have reread multiple times, and it is one of my childhood favorites. But one of the reading projects that I've been wanting to do for ages is to read through the entire series and to possibly do a video on the series as a whole, the Oz series, that I love so much and that I have very fond memories about. So this is a fantasy series. In the first book, of course, we are introduced to Dorothy, who has been swept up into the land of Oz, and she is trying to get back to Kansas where she lives. And on the journey she meets several very memorable characters who all have their own things that they need from the Wizard of Oz. And I don't know if I actually read this edition because it's so tiny, which I hadn't considered when I ordered it, but I would actually love to collect the facsimile editions that I think HarperCollins possibly have published. Either way, I would really love to read the series as a whole during the autumn/winter season. We'll see if it happens, or if I at least get started on reading the books in order, and that I'll be able to chat with you more about the series as a complete set. Last, for the children's literature related things, this is not really children's literature. I would say it's more on the young side of young adult, but to me these are just absolutely fantastic. I read so much of this series as a young teen myself, and it is the Witch series created by Elisabetta Gnone and comic art direction by Alessandro Barbucci and Barbara Canepa. This is an Italian comic series that follows a group of young women who, or girls who, figure out that they have magical powers, and it has all of the typical things you would expect from that kind of story set up. But I absolutely loved this as a teen, and I actually reread this volume a couple of years ago when I first bought this, because I originally owned them in the Swedish translation, and these editions I think were republished by Yen Press, and I got them and read this one, and I feel like it definitely lived up to my expectations of it. It has a truth, an authenticity to me that not all teen related stories have. It still felt authentic and well developed as a adult reader, and in particular the friendship relationship, the struggles that they have with using their powers, and some of them are very hesitant to accept this magic. Some of them are more excited about the potential of it. They have conflicts within the friend group. They also have conflicts and challenges with their families, and they are all with very different family dynamics and family structures. So there's just a lot of things that I loved about this series as a young reader, and I've wanted to reread the entire series and collect all of the republished Yen Press editions. And I own the first set of 3. These 3 volumes are part of the 12 portals, and then there's another set of 3 and another, I think it might be 12 volumes or something like that. Don't remember the exact, but I would love to read through all of these 3 that I haven't reread for a long time. Moving on to the adult fiction, as I mentioned, I have been really drawn to series lately, and another series I would really love to dive into this autumn is The Lord of the Rings. This is the beautiful tiny hardback editions. So we have The Hobbit, and then the other ones have these simple designs. Probably not gonna actually read the physical copies of these, but instead I have been collecting the Andy Serkis audiobook versions of the series, and and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into his narration. I started listening to the first one last year with his narration, and I really loved it, so I never got around to finishing it, and I thought I could try to get through the entire trilogy during the autumn. And my plan is not to reread The Hobbit, because I have actually reread that one a couple of times, and my thinking is that I will be watching the movie adaptations of The Hobbit, because I have watched the first one but not the second and the third, because it's not been received very well, but I was kind of curious, and I feel like it's very autumny as well, the movies. And so I thought I could watch the 3 movies of The Hobbit and then move on to listen to the audiobooks of The Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I feel very drawn to fantasy, I think, in general. And I also really want to watch the new Prime series related to Middle-earth, even though I am kind of skeptical, to be honest. From the trailer, it didn't look... It didn't look like something I would enjoy, but I am definitely interested enough to give it a shot. So I think I will watch the Hobbit movies and listen through the audiobooks, and then go on to watch the Prime Lord of the Rings series as well. Let me know if you watched the new series and what your thoughts are, if I should expect anything of it. Also, if you've watched the Hobbit movie adaptations, I'd be interested in your thoughts. Next up, we have a book that I've owned for a few years, and that is Sufficient Grace by Amy Espeseth. And I actually got this one through the Mothbox subscription that Mercedes did several years ago, and it also feels very autumny to me, the description of this. It's set in a religious community, and the people in this community are very much living according to the seasons and the weathers and the different activities are related to the seasons in this community. And it's a girls coming of age story, which of course Mercedes is well known for enjoying. It says Ruth and her cousin Naomi live in rural Wisconsin, part of an isolated religious community. The girls' lives are ruled by the rhythms of nature. Beneath the surface of this closed, frozen world, hidden dangers lurk. So it sounds like it is kind of spooky and darker, and it's nature themed, which is another thing that I am very drawn to at the moment, and that feels very autumny to me. So been meaning to get to this one for ages, and it seems like the kind of book that I am in the mood for, so that is why it's on the list. And then a Japanese short story collection that I got, I think, earlier this year is Toddler-Hunting and Other Stories by Taeko Kono, and this was translated by Lucy North. This is a collection of kind of weird, absurdist, dark stories is how I have, how I think of them. I'm not sure if that is entirely accurate. From one of the most influential voices in post-war Japanese literature, this extraordinary collection of stories introduces us to women risking self-destruction to fulfill their desires. And one of the stories in this is actually referred to in Little Labors by Rivka Gelchen that I read recently, and that also made me more interested in picking this one up soonish. Lastly, for the fiction is a Swedish book called Samlade Verk by Lydia Sandgren, and this is actually coming out in the English translation in November. It is kind of a books about books situation. It is about a man who works in publishing, and it's set in my hometown, Gothenburg. I'll read you the English description of this from the translation. Martin Berg, the intrepid owner of a small and ever-challenged independent publishing house, is in crisis. Following the disappearance of his wife, he confronts his middle-aged existence and the reality of his loss. He begins to ponder what his collected works might consist of if he were a significant enough artist to deserve a retrospective. retrospective that his childhood friend, the remarkable painter Gustav Becker, is about to enjoy. Against this impending event, Martin must unpack his passionate love for his now missing wife, his relationship with his 2 children, and the unfinished manuscript he's been working on for years. I have read about a fifth of this before, and again, I am really wanting to return to it. I was really enjoying it, and especially the reading about a city that you are very familiar with is always a lot of fun, I feel like. And so I am enjoying the city backdrop of it, as well as the literary scene, and the characters themselves are quite interesting as well. So I would love to get to this one and being able to chat with you more about it before the English publication. Lastly, we have my nonfiction stack. Nonfiction November is coming up in November, and I'll be doing a separate TBR for that. I feel like it's such a long time until then, so I don't know what I'll be in the mood for in November. But these are some of the books that I'm drawn to at the moment, and most of them are nature related. So first of all is the one that isn't, and that is If I May by A. Milne. You all know probably that I've been reading through A. Milne's essay collections this year. I read 2 of them already this year, and this is going to be the 3rd one. I've really enjoyed spending time with his essays in particular, and I've just been wanting to continue on down that route. He talks a lot about his writing process, which is something I always find very interesting. He talks about being an author, he talks about manners and norms and being a host, and all kinds of things that I find him always to be a joy and a comfort read. So there's that one. 2 books I have are nature related, but are also specifically knitting related. I always feel very drawn to knitting as an activity during the autumn, and because of that, I've been also wanting to read things related to knitting as an activity. So this Golden Fleece, A Journey Through Britain's Knitted History by Esther Rutter, is a knitting history, and she talks about several different projects that she's done and the history of the projects, or the history of the objects that she is planning on knitting herself. And so it's sort of a personal touch with her own knitting history and knitting journey, as well as the history of the craft. Next, we have a book that I got quite recently and I'm really eager to get to. It's called A Short History of the World According to Sheep by Sally Coulthard. This is a quite popular nature writer that I haven't read before, but I'm particularly drawn to this one because one of the knitters that I follow on Instagram specifically recommended this one for people who are interested in knitting and the materials that are so very often used in knitting. So this is talking about sheep, but of course also talking about wool, because wool is a significant aspect to the human's relationship with sheep. So it is kind of a natural history of sheep, as well as talking about our relationship with this animal and how we have used wool in a historical sense. And so in that sense, it is definitely knitting related. Of course, autumn to me is very much about mushrooms. I love eating mushrooms of all kinds, and I've been wanting to get into mushroom picking for the last few years. For me, mushroom and fungi is very much related to the autumn season. And so one of the ones that I have on my shelf that I haven't yet read is Mykophilia, Revelations from the Weird World of Mushrooms by Eugenia Baum. I feel like I've read at least one mushroom or fungi related book for the last few years in a row, and this is probably the one I'll get to this season. If I remember correctly, this is quite a lot about the eating of mushrooms and the mushroom picking rather than the science of it, even though I'm sure there is quite a lot of that as well. But she is described as being a food writer, so I'm expecting this to have kind of a lean towards the foraging aspect of mushrooms. And I'm really excited to add this one to my mushroom and fungi related reading. Last of my books for this video, and last my nonfiction, is Badgerland, The Twilight World of Britain's Most Enigmatic Animal by Patrick Barkham. I feel like I've read I read the Butterfly book by Patrick Barkham last year, Butterfly Isles, that I really enjoyed, and I've been wanting to read more of his books. This is one that felt autumn appropriate to me, particularly because of the Twilight aspect, because he, I think, goes out to find them during the night. There are more badgers per square kilometre in Britain than in any other country, yet they are scarcely seen and much maligned. Travelling across our fields and through our woods, Patrick Barkham seeks out these distinctively striped creatures and the enthusiasts, farmers and scientists who know them best. My first love when it comes to nature-related writing is always going to be books about animals, and so it feels like it is time to read this. So those are all of the books that I have on my autumn reading plans pile. I would love to know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were, if you enjoyed them, if you think I should prioritize any of them sooner rather than later. If you're interested in my thoughts on any of them in particular, let me know. Also, let me know if you have made any autumn reading plans or if you have any recommendations for autumn appropriate reading that you think I will like. I would love to chat with you about all of these books and general autumn reading plans. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you soon.